Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Alpha Omega Occasionally. And at this occasion, I'm imparting a bit of, let's say, my experience of living in Thailand with you. And it's to do with depression. And, you know, you can't get to a latter stage of your life without suffering from some kind of depression. I'm speaking from personal experience, but I know most of you can echo the same thing. I'm 59 years old in 2 days from now. And in my life, I've experienced what I would call clinical depression when I was around 14 or 15. I won't go into detail on it, but it lasted for a while. It was to do with puberty. But since then, sporadically, I've suffered from conditional depression, which means I don't have to tell you. You know what it means. It's the conditions in which you find yourself in. But my experience in Thailand with depression is something worth sharing with you. And that's what I'm going to do. I came here 11 years ago. And at the time, I was riding on the crest of a wave. I was looking forward to starting my life in this wonderful place. I was filled with apprehension because I didn't know what way it was going to pan out. Things panned out quite well, as it turned out, but it wasn't guaranteed. Nothing ever is. But I found myself in similar circumstances in terms of my mental health to where I was when I lived back home in Ireland. Even in the darkest winter, back home, where I felt that I was depressed because of pressures in my job, because of pressures with finance, because of problems with relationships. These are all things that will trigger some kind of depression. But I've met people here who are suffering from depression, and so much so that they are, well, I won't go into detail on specifics of people, but so much so that it's more heightened than I've ever experienced in my life. And the reasons are that these people, I won't say these people, but people in general, move to Thailand. A lot of people come alone. I came alone. And it doesn't matter how solvent you are, but if you're alone, you can live the high life if you can afford it. And because things are so cheap here, you can enjoy nights out and you get the attention of the girls and all the rest of it. But at the end of the night or on the next morning, you'll wake up alone. And if you're on a retirement thing, you know, an O visa retirement thing, you'll wake up alone in your apartment and you'll have very little contact with the locals and you'll be very much alone. And you can find yourself drifting into this state of isolation. And what follows on from that may be a state of depression. I know people like this. And one of the things about the cheap living here is you can afford Thai-style apartments which are nothing more than 4 walls with breeze blocks, that's cavity blocks with holes in them to let the air come in and out. I was in one of those places when I first came here, and I had to buy an air conditioning unit and patch up the holes in those blocks with tissue paper to make the air conditioning effective. But there were no windows in the place. And when I patched up the holes in the blocks, the place was pitch dark. And you'd wake up in the morning alone. And if you'd no job to go to, you had to make yourself busy. But you can't make yourself too busy, because if you do, you'll end up spending too much money. So you can go for walks, you can look at the sights, but there's only a certain amount of time you can spend enjoying the sights, because you live in Thailand, or I was living in Thailand at that stage, and it becomes the norm. And when things become the norm, things become almost repetitive. So regardless of whether or not the sun is shining, the sky is blue and the palm trees are swaying in the breeze, you can still find yourself in a state of depression no matter where you are. And you don't need me to tell you this, but to come to Thailand, if you're feeling depressed and you think you're going to relieve your depression by coming here, it may work for a period of time because of the novelty value. But believe me, from personal experience, you can find yourself lapsing into this state of depression here because of the isolation, because you don't speak the language. Even if you do speak the language like me, to a degree, you don't speak it like a native, and you won't be able to interact with them. So it's like living in a parallel universe. Even though I'm married to a Thai, and happily married, I have a son. He's Thai. Well, he's half Irish, half Thai. He's got dual citizenship. But at the same time, I'm living in a parallel universe. When I go to her weekend house up in Pontootini, and our family go there as well, they're all talking Thai at 90 miles an hour. And I've no idea what they're saying. And they never communicate with me. They never say, by the way, my wife, look, in fairness, I'm not saying it's a criticism of her, but she never said, by the way, Dave, this is what we're talking about. Because if she did do that, she'd have to do it consistently. So I end up, I'll give you an example of this isolation. Something just occurred to me there. Today is Friday, the 10th of November. And the ATMs across Thailand are closed for 2 days because of some updating thing they're doing. But I didn't get that from my bank. I didn't get that from the news media. I got that from my wife. And it was a by the way, because this information has been rolled out in the Thai language to Thai people. But I wasn't informed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed it. But that's an example of how you can miss things and end up feeling isolated. Now imagine I didn't find out about that prior to today. Because I think it was effective midnight last night. And it goes up till midnight Saturday, Sunday morning. Imagine I didn't know about that. And I nonchalantly had a few drinks last night and spent almost all my cash, and wake up midday today and want to go and buy a bit of dinner. Yeah, I can scan my QR code and pay for things with my phone, but I can't get cash. And how isolating that would make you feel if you realise, God, how did I not know about this? But that's just an example of how you can feel isolated here, and that can lead to depression. So your plans, no matter where, it's not just Thailand, of course, no matter where you go, if you're planning to retire there solo, you've got to be aware of the fact that you've got to have mechanisms in place that will safeguard your mental well-being. Because living a life of leisure, and we're speaking about being retired, but even if you're a teacher, one of the people I know is a teacher and they're suffering from this because they live alone and they're teaching online. So it doesn't matter if you're living the life of leisure or if you're working, because if you're working, I was a teacher before. I worked in a school, and I was isolated in that because none of the other teachers spoke English. One or two, maybe a bit, but that was it. And every day I was always the outsider, and I never really understood what was going on. I used to go into classes and there'd be no students in the class. I'd have to go down 4 flights of stairs, but there was no elevators in the place, and go to reception. And the oldish kind of woman who ran reception, had very limited English. And they said, "Oh, they've gone off to the dinosaur park. How come you weren't told?" I said, "What?" And you see, these things happen all the time. So you'd want to be ready for it. The best solution, one of the ways that I alleviate any form of isolation is to be able to communicate on YouTube to you. It's therapeutic. It really is. So if you're coming here and you have a plan of campaign and you know what you're going to do, remember that you're going to be feeling isolated from time to time, and that can be a very dangerous thing. So there you go. I hope you found this video informative, and if you haven't already clicked that like button, now's the time to do it. Click the share button, click the subscribe button, do all those wonderful things, and I'll bring you back another wonderful video very soon. Thanks for joining me.